Well, Miss Evans, we are so just proud and honored to receive this from your family today. Just for you to share this with us at this point in time in your life, we are just so honored. And we will take care of it. We will continue to share his legacy, and his memories will go on.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yay. So much. I'm just so appreciative. Been a great day already.
And thank you too. It means a lot to us that you entrust us with your father's uniform.
Y'all get
And they can come here.
You to come and tell people about where their father's uniform is and their grandfather's uniform. That's how this museum lives and breathes.
Keeps it going better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Stories and stories.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate it so much what you're doing. And I just thought this room seemed like the place to be.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you again.
I was born in Archer County near Wichita Falls, the youngest of 7 children. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and I'm the only one left at this time. I went to school in Wichita Falls, finished high school there in 1933, and times were pretty tough in 33. I couldn't afford college. So I went to the oil field, went to work as a roughneck in the oil field. I did that for a year, and I found out that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So my employer encouraged me to go to college. So I enrolled at A&M, took petroleum engineering, and finished school there in 38 with a degree in petroleum engineering and a commission in the Army Reserve as a second lieutenant. Well, I thought that commission was just something I'd picked up along the way and would never use, but it wasn't long till I found out different. In 1940, I got a letter from the War Department saying that they needed officers in the Air Corps, that I could transfer to the Air Corps and take training as a bombardier. Well, I thought that over. I thought flying would be better than walking, and my commission was in the infantry. So I applied for it, but a few months later I got a letter saying that due to my occupation, my job in the oil industry, it was considered essential to national defense, and I wasn't eligible for active duty and therefore not eligible for transfer. I thought, well, that's not too bad. I'll just miss this war that's coming up. But on December the 7th, 1941, all of that changed pretty quickly. And my job wasn't quite as essential, I guess, as it had been. And I was called on active duty, went on active duty on March the 10th, 1942. First assignment was in California, Camp Roberts, and those people out there said they knew I was from Texas by the way I talked, and they nicknamed me Tex. Well, that stayed with me all through the Army, and my wife today still calls me Tex. So I have about 3 names I go by: Andrew, Jack, AJ, Tex. I answer to a lot of things. After 6 weeks there, I was sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, to take training as a communications officer. When I finished that 3 months communications training, I was assigned to the cadre to form the 83rd Division at Camp Atterbury, Indiana. And I went there in July, And the next March, I was sent back to Fort Benning, Georgia for some more training. And when I finished that, the 83rd Division was on maneuvers in Tennessee, and I joined them there. And on completion of maneuvers, I was sent overseas as a replacement. And I was sent to England. I joined the 1st Division there, had come back from North Africa and Sicily campaigns and were being built up again to make the invasion of Normandy. I was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry, 1st Division as a communications officer. And I was a communications officer with the 2nd Battalion for the duration of my service. We trained in England for the invasion of Normandy from November until June. And I was in the first wave that landed on Omaha Beach. That wasn't easy. Getting there was almost as hard as being there. We had been convinced that the beach would be a walk in the park because the Navy was supposed to fire millions of rockets at the beach, and the Air Corps dropped millions of tons of bombs at midnight or after midnight. Well, as it turned out, the Navy rockets all hit in the water, or short, and the bombs that the Air Force dropped was inland. The first bomb crater I saw was probably 5 miles inland from the beach, which meant that the Germans were waiting for us. I can't talk about this much without getting very emotional. But it was an experience that you don't want to remember, you don't want to relive it, and you have to just get it out of your mind if you're going to keep your mind. But when we did hit the beach under intense fire, I had 28 men in my communications platoon, and 21 of them were either killed or wounded. That's the reason I cannot watch a picture of an invasion or anything connected with it because I just can't do it. But at any rate, I got through that day. I was awarded the Bronze Star for my actions that day on the beach. I don't know, I was probably in complete shock and didn't know what I was doing, but according to the citations I did. Okay, the first troops to break out of the beachhead was the G Company, which is in 2nd Battalion, where I was the communications officer. And I went with Joe Dawson, who was the company commander, in the breakthrough. We tiptoed through a minefield in a little valley partially hidden from view of Germans, and were able to get through. The next morning we were behind the German lines, but we were not very far from the beach. And the work wasn't quite finished at that time, but we did rout the Germans and had them on the run most of the rest of the war, had them retreating. I took place in the most of the major battles, including St. Lo and Aachen, Battle of the Bulge, crossing of the Rhine. The 1st Division was in continuous combat for 339 days from D-Day until B-E Day. We met the Russians at the Elbe River, and of course took thousands of German prisoners that didn't want to be captured by the Russians. From there, after the war, I was in the Army of Occupation at Bamberg, Germany, until September of that year. And that was after Japan surrendered, and there was talk of sending the troops before that to Japan or to the South Pacific, and everybody was tickled when they got the news of VJ Day. I came home in the month of September '45. Arrived back in Shelbyville, which is the home of my wife, on September the 19th, '45. And I was mustered out of the Army on December 31st, '45. By my choice. I had the chance to stay in and receive a promotion if I wanted to, but I did not want to. That's my story.
Were you the communications officer, where you had the people that were doing communications? You were commanding them?
I had 28 men in my communications platoon, and 21 of those didn't make the D-Day.
Could you possibly describe just a typical day? Were you in communications, handling traffic, just all sorts of battlefield type stuff? Is that what it was, or ship to shore? Or
my job was to keep the battalion commander in touch with the frontline troops. I was with the front lines as much as anywhere, and I had a battalion commander that wanted a telephone line. He didn't want to use a radio, walkie-talkie or anything. So we were stringing wire from the front lines back to the command post of the battalion commander. And of course they were knocked out frequently, and we had to go back and repair them.
Was that post on the beach somewhere, or?
No, this is on in during the next 300.
After that, okay.
Yeah.
So the command post was probably behind the forward front lines.
Way behind.
And so your people had to run the wires and to maintain the communications.
Right.
That was a pretty important job.
We had a battalion commander that demanded it.
Well, of course, that's the best way. If you're hardwired, you don't have to worry about your orders being intercepted.
Right. But on the beach, back to D-Day, when we landed, we had very little equipment because we were put out in water that was over our heads. And most of them discarded their equipment in order to get to the beach, which some didn't make it anyway. But I had to gather up enough radio equipment there that was washing up on the beach to keep communications after we made a breakthrough out of the beachhead.
Well, my point is that is such an important job. because communication on those type of operations is the key,
Yeah,
isn't it?
right.
If you don't have communications from your commanders and your field commanders, it all breaks down.
We had to tell the battalion commander where the enemy was, what we were doing, and keep him completely informed on everything that was happening. Well, we came home. Going over, we went over on the Queen Mary with 18,000 troops stacked on it, and we went over in 3.5 days. Well, coming back wasn't quite that urgent, I guess. We came back on a much smaller ship. Took 14 days to come back. We landed in Newport News, Virginia.
Big shipyard.
Yeah, and went out to Camp Patrick Henry, which is in that area. Spent the night, and the next day we were put on trains to wherever we wanted to go. And my train, of course, went to Indianapolis, Indiana, and then to Shelbyville, which is 20 miles away. And we arrived at as I remember, around 9 o'clock at night. So there was no big celebrations or welcomings or anything at that time. But my wife was there, and that was the important thing, and her family. The only thing I didn't say, I guess, was I received the Bronze Star on D-Day, and during the rest of the war, I received the Bronze Star twice more and the Silver Star once. And I'm kind of proud of those. I have a copy of the citations there that accompanied the medals. This is the citation that accompanied the first Bronze Star. It reads Andrew J. Evans, Jr. Number, what was the Social Security number at that time? Rank and serial number. First Lieutenant, then Second Lieutenant, Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry, for heroic achievement in connection with military operations against the enemy in the vicinity of Colville-sur-Mer, Normandy, France, 6th of June, 1944. Undaunted by heavy enemy fire, Lieutenant Evans fearlessly led a group of men across hazardous terrain to the exposed beach and directed salvage of much-needed signal equipment, thereby facilitating effective contact between assault elements. Lieutenant Evans' heroic actions and outstanding initiative contributed materially to the success of the invasion. This is a citation for Oak Leaf Cluster to the Bronze Star. And Andrew J. Evans, 1st Lieutenant, Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry, for heroic achievement in connection with military operations against the enemy in the vicinity of Heistern, Germany, 21st, 22nd of November, 1944. Despite heavy artillery fire, small arms fire, Lieutenant Evans guided a wire crew across barren terrain and supervised establishment of communications between his battalion commander and forward assault elements. Lieutenant Evans' aggressive leadership and personal heroism facilitated a coordinated and successful attack upon an objective. That's it. This is headquarters, Lieutenant Evans, headquarters, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry, for meritorious achievement in connection with military operations against the enemy in the European Theater of Operations from 25th of January 45 to the 31st of March 45. The skillful, determined, and resourceful manner in which Lieutenant Evans executed his responsibilities as communications officer contributed materially to the combat efficiency of his organization. And this is for the Silver Star. Andrew J. Evans, Jr., 1st Lieutenant Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry, for gallantry in action in the vicinity of Bogheim, Germany, 24th of February, 1945. Despite intense enemy mortar, artillery, and small arms fire, Lieutenant Evans fearlessly moved about perilous terrain and skillfully directed the installation of vital wire lines. When communications were disrupted by hostile bombing, he courageously supervised the making of necessary repairs. Lieutenant Evans' gallant actions reflect great credit upon the Army of the United States of America.
This is all what you've already said, but
This is what's on the web site. It was put on during the dedication of a memorial in Washington.
Okay, would you please read it for us?
Andrew J. Evans, Jr., Branch of Services, U.S. Army, hometown, Wichita Falls, Texas, honored by Mrs. A.J. Evans, Jr., wife. Commissioned in the U.S. Army after graduating from Texas A&M in 1939 as the first lieutenant communications officer with Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry. He was in the first wave to attack the German forces on Omaha, Easy Red Beach at Normandy, France, on June the 6th, 1944. 3 out of 4 of his company were either killed or injured on that day, participated in the most heroic assault after undergoing hemorrhoid surgery 2 weeks earlier and turning down a medical exemption from the invasion subsequent to D-Day. He and the others remained in his outfit, participated in the breakthrough at St. Lo, the liberation of Paris, the Battle of the Bulge. After crossing the Rhine south of Berlin, they met the Russian forces at the Elbe River, where thousands of the enemy were captured in and around Franzenbad, Czechoslovakia. Next was the occupation of Bamberg, Germany, where the celebrated VJ Day returned to the U.S. at Newport News, Virginia on September 17, 1945. For his actions in combat, he was awarded the Bronze Star with 2 Oak Leaf clusters and the Silver Star.